Hello everyone and welcome. Today marks yet another milestone for the people of Somaliland. It's 60 years today since we achieved our independence from Britain, a fate that placed our country among the 17 African nations that gained their independence in 1960. That pivotal year is known as the Year of Africa, as it saw several African countries attain their independence. As a nation, we have come a long way. It has not been easy, but because of the unity of purpose and the backbone of patriotism, nationalism, and sacrifice, we have overcome so much upheavals and achieved so much as a country. In our 60-year existence as a republic, we have made tremendous strides. We have also stumbled on our way, but our spirit has never been deflated. Therefore, as the Somalilanders around the world celebrate this day, the Somaliland Liaison Office in Kenya has invited you to be part of this joyous moment to recap and share the remarkable strides our country has achieved, as well as discussing the way forward. It's my great pleasure as a representative of Somaliland to Kenya to welcome you to these discussions. In our panel today, we have Dr. Adna Adam, the former Foreign Minister of Somaliland, Matt Bryden, the Director of Sahan Research, Cham Suchama, Director of Hargeisa Cultural Center, Ambassador Mahmoud Maalin, former Executive Secretary of IGAD, Michael Rubin, Horn of African Analyst and Resident Scholar of American Enterprise Institute. We also have Michael Walls, who is the Professor of Development Politics and Economy at DPU at University College London. And finally, Abdurrahman Ismail, who is a consultant on investment in the energy sector. Our discussion today will focus on the history of Somaliland, the past, the present, and the future. We shall be discussing some interesting topics, such as the recent talks between Somaliland and Somalia, and Djibouti, which attended by the presidents of the two nations. Our Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation will brief us about the talks, what's at stake for Somaliland. So before we engage in discussions, I take this opportunity to invite the Somaliland Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation to share a word. Thank you.
Hello, dear distinguished participants and friends of Somaliland. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this virtual meeting as we are commemorating the 60th anniversary of the independence of the Republic of Somaliland. On behalf of the government and the people of Somaliland, I would like to thank you and wish to express my sincere gratitude for the goodwill and the solidarity you have shown in joining us in this event and supporting our just cause. And panel members do know that Somaliland has enjoyed sustained peace, democracy, and economic growth for 30 years. I therefore would hope that your discussions here today would further enlighten the rest of the world about what Somaliland has achieved in terms of development, stability, and peace, and also about the progress it has realized in terms of the struggle it has waged for self-determination and international recognition. I will not go into details, as I know that the panel members are all knowledgeable about the historical and the political dynamics of the Horn of Africa, and especially Somalia and Somaliland. I will only give you a brief overview of the recent Djibouti meeting. The discussion is circulated around conference building measures and mainly concentrated on the issues that consensus has been reached in the 2012-2015 meetings. The dialogue on the core issue of what would be the future relation between Somalia and Somaliland has been postponed until the conference building measures would be finalized. Any questions you may have on that issue, you are in good hands, as Adna Ismail, a member of our team, is in the panel. And with that, I would like to turn over the microphone to the chair. And thank you.
So I would like to start with Dr. Edna Aden to give a few remarks before I can pose some questions to her.
Well, thank you very much. And hello to Ambassador Mahbub, who I haven't greeted when I joined. It really is a great day today for Somaliland. It's a great day for Africa because the independence of Somaliland in 1960 heralded the independence of so many other countries. And by the way, we share an Independence Day with Madagascar. So greetings to everybody in Madagascar also. What the world forgets, the panel here, every member of the panel knows, is that Somaliland, former British Somaliland Protectorate, was never a part of the Italian colony of La Somalia Italiana. Somaliland was the firstborn. Somaliland was the only Somali inhabited country that had never been colonized. We had a treaty of protection with Great Britain. And in 1960, when we gained our independence on the 26th of June, we got that place in history that made us become the firstborn, the first Somali-speaking countries to become fully sovereign and independent. And it is later, when former Italian Somaliland gained its independence 5 days later, that it joined us, because we were already there. And that's something that I hope the world will begin to distinguish between Somalia becoming the second-born and joining with the firstborn, or Somaliland breaking away, as quote and unquote the world labels us, breaking away, splintering, fragmenting Somalia, which is something which is totally not true. Union came because 5 Somali nations would be joining to form the Greater Somalia. 5 French Somaliland, la Côte Française des Somalie, la Somalia Italiana, the Northern Frontier District of Kenya, and the Somali inhabited portion in Ethiopia would all form those 5 countries that would form the basis for the Great Somali. Now, since Somaliland joined with Somalia, or Somalia joined Somaliland, and the union never flourished, the union failed because it was never ratified. It was never a formal union. It was something that came from the will of the people. It was an emotional union. And when our union failed to satisfy all the ambitions that were there, anticipation that was there, that all the good that would come from the unification never materialized, then Somaliland said, we are moving back from this union. It's not working. It's not good for the people of Somaliland. It's totally biased. It's turning aggressive. It's turning, to the point, aggression to the point where it culminated in a very brutal civil war that resulted in genocide and thousands and hundreds of thousands of our people getting killed. And in 1991, when we succeeded to clear the troops of Somalia from the territory of the former British Somaliland, a territory which is legally demarcated by international treaties, some Anglo-French treaties, Anglo-Italian treaties, and Anglo-Ethiopian treaties demarcate that border. So it is well within internationally defined borders. And when we moved away from that union, we moved within our territory. Now, this is totally in support of the African Union Constitution that says borders inherited at the time of independence should not be changed in Africa, because clans move, live across borders. And if borders followed nomads, followed the grazing of camels, followed the movement of people, then would every border, every boundary in Somaliland, in Africa and in the world would become fluid and non-existent. So to keep order and within the dictates of international law and the African Union, Somaliland is well within its territory, protecting its people, protecting its rights, and welcoming, after 30 years of track record of stability and peace and democratic government and elections and peace and stability, is welcoming a new era of cooperation within the people.
I'd now like to ask a question. Dr. Edna, you did mention something about the talks between Somalia and Somaliland that happened in Djibouti. Do you want to give us an update on that briefly?
When people have a dialogue and agree on something, it is because they wish to respect it, and they can respect it, and they wish to build on it. And once they implement those initial agreements, they move on to other issues that can be sorted out and agreed on in one way or the other. The meeting in Djibouti was good. We appreciated the welcome of Djibouti, the dialogue between two countries, Somalia and Somaliland, in the presence of the Prime Minister of Ethiopia and in the presence of course, the host country, Djibouti, and international IGAD, the American Embassy, European Union, and international community was there, which I believe in the past had never happened. Or if it had, only after the initial opening of the summits, then others would leave. We needed partners to be there. We needed mediators to be there. We needed people, the international community, to hear our case. This was Somaliland's first day to have its case heard on an international platform. And all Somaliland was asking for is that there should be goodwill and respect of all agreements that had been reached before, and then move forward.
Our next speaker is Ambassador Mahbub Malim, who is the former Executive Secretary of the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD. Ambassador, welcome. It's good to have you on this very historic day. A few remarks from you.
My personal take and that of everybody who is in leadership, who is good-willing in the Horn of Africa, is that regardless of our differences, regardless of what we think is political right or wrong, the people of Somaliland are part and parcel of the population of the Horn of Africa region, and they deserve service delivery, they deserve support, they deserve humanitarian aspects, and they deserve to be part of all development interventions that come through the regional organizations, be it IGAD or African Union Commission. I don't think anybody disagrees with this. But on the ongoing dialogue now, dialogue and mediation processes activities that take a very, very long time. So I would guard against a rush. I would guard against trying to leave anybody or any entities out of the discussions. I would guard against anything that introduces bad faith, and that probably negates any peace, any trust building initiatives. We have to really be very careful in that. We have to have a much more expanded technical team that does the technical background and really crunches figures and discussions on the actual issues. It should be touched, otherwise politicians will shy away from for a while. They would require to take appropriate breaks as and when to consult with the capitals and with the bigwigs that are behind the scenes, and there should be a lot of shuttle diplomacy.
Thank you so much for those remarks. I would now like to move on to our next speaker, who is Michael Walls. Michael Walls is a professor of development politics.
I think the place I would start would be to say, Ambassador Mahbub Malim talked about the 2005 AU fact-finding mission. Now, there have been a number of initiatives like that, but that's a very good one to start talking about, because what that said for Somaliland's case is hugely significant. And it's worth just reminding you all, if you know already, and if you don't know, you need to know, what some of the words that report used. One of the things that the African Union and African states in general have been concerned about is the idea that if you recognize borders of countries which were united at some point on independence, then you're opening a Pandora's box of problems, because all sorts of other countries are going to come up with reasons why they also need that kind of dispensation. Now, first of all, Edna said that doesn't make sense. She's right. Many people have said it doesn't make sense. And the reason it doesn't make sense, first of all, is precisely what Edna said, which is that Somaliland was actually an independent nation at the time of independence. So it's not an issue of not recognizing or changing the post-colonial or the point of independence borders. It would be a matter of reverting to them. Now, that's an important principle, and the AU report acknowledges that. It goes further than that, though. It says that in Somaliland's case, partly because of that, actually the act of finding some way of accommodating the practical independence of Somaliland would not be opening a Pandora's box. The principle is not there. And what's more, it is imperative that the AU should, and I'm quoting the report, find a special method for dealing with the outstanding case of Somaliland. The lack of recognition, it goes on to say, ties the hands of the authorities and people of Somaliland as they cannot effectively and sustainably transact with the outside world to pursue the reconstruction and development goals they should be pursuing. Now, that's a very strong statement from the AU. So my suggestion would be that building on that kind of report from an international organization as august and relevant to this issue as the AU would be a very good place to start. Now, unfortunately, as Ambassador Mahmoud said, the AU report was the right report at the wrong time. And what happened was it got put in the drawer of someone's desk and it got forgotten. And unfortunately, Somaliland didn't pick it up and really push it in the way that I think diplomatically could have been done. But that doesn't mean it can't be done now, because I think that there is a lot of mileage to be made out of the fact that this problem of recognition is not a legal problem. The legal basis is there. There are legal opinions which say that. It's a political problem.
Great, thank you so much, Michael Walls. Great insights on there. But I see that Dr. Edna was a little bit unsettled in her seat when you were talking about the 2005 AU fact-finding mission report. Dr. Edna, briefly, in just a minute, could you actually say what it is you wanted to say before we can bring on Michael Rubin to give his remarks as well?
Yeah, well, I was foreign minister at the time, and I had the honor to be negotiating it. The leader of that delegation was the late Patrick Mazimaka, who was the Deputy Secretary General of the AU at the time. The country that had the presidency of the AU at the time was Nigeria. So that's when we also went to Nigeria and had dialogue with President Obasanjo. And I believe at the time he was busy with elections that were about to happen in Nigeria, and he was not able to follow that. We welcome President Obasanjo's interest to reconnect with that dialogue, with finding a solution for the Somaliland problem, because Somaliland is not seeking independence from Somalia. For goodness sake, somebody should get that into their heads. We were not owned by Somalia. They united with us when we were already sovereign.
Thank you, Dr. Edna. Michael Rubin, I would like to bring you on. Of course, give your remarks. I have a few questions for you. I don't know if I could start by posing a question to you, or I should do this after the remarks, but let me pose a question to you. Maybe it could set the pace for your remarks as well and the conversation that you're going to have just shortly. Do you think that there can be a role that Somaliland can play in the US strategic interest in the Horn of Africa region? Because we have seen the United States showing a lot of interest in Somaliland the past few months, maybe year, and this is increasing interest in Somaliland. So what role can Somaliland play in making sure that these relations grow even stronger?
Thank you, Joy. I also want to thank all the panelists. It's only been 16 months since my first trip to Somaliland. Meeting Dr. Edna was like drinking from a fire hose in learning all about, but I also have had great teachers in being able to sit down and talk to Dr. Jama, Ambassador Bashir, and back in Washington, of course, Bashir Goth. So I just want to thank everyone who has been helpful and supportive. It's an excellent question, Joy. There are some things that trouble me right now with regard to the United States position towards Somaliland. First of all, Somaliland is in a weird situation in Washington in which it has far more sympathy unofficially than it does officially. There's also the issue of, while it may appear that the United States is very interested in Somaliland, especially given the recent Djibouti talks, I'm not so sure that that's the case as an analyst rather than as an advocate. Because if we look, for example, at the Israel-Palestine dispute and American mediation, or the dispute on the Korean Peninsula and American mediation, or even disputes, for example, in the Great Lakes region of Africa or in the Western Sahara, it's evident that there is much more attention paid at a Secretary of State level, if not a higher level, just either in the appointments of special envoys or in the fact that the Secretary of State himself is invested in the negotiation process. Now, when it comes to US policy towards the Horn of Africa, the United States is still tripping over what its basic philosophy is. For decades, the United States took a periphery-first approach in which we would recognize the reality on the ground. And this is what Michael Walls had talked about in terms of the precedents which were already established, the traditional United States approach to Somaliland. But in recent years, the embassy in Somalia, in Mogadishu, has taken the center-first approach in which it believes philosophically that if they can strengthen the center, they can bring all the periphery to its knees, and they can strengthen the center by awarding it a great deal of aid and assistance to dispense patronage with. The problem with that historically is that that is what brought down the failure, that's what caused Somalia to fail in the first place. And so it's important for people in Somaliland to ask, is this center-first approach, number one, working? And number two, are the people that are implementing it, saying that they have the support and attention of the entirety of the US government, or are they simply freelancing without actually having the buy-in of the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, and the broader US government? I would argue that it's the latter. While the United States will always be interested in negotiation, and I'm glad that the United States is beginning to work towards mediation, it's important to understand that in order to solidify the US approach, it's important to force the United States to invest in the status quo, to invest in both sides as an honest broker. This is one of the reasons why I think that a basic demand needs to be an opening of an American diplomatic office in Hargeisa. We have an office in Taiwan. We have an office in Syrian Kurdistan. We have a consulate in Iraqi Kurdistan. There's no reason why establishing an office needs to predetermine the outcome of diplomacy. Likewise, as an American, I will take no position on whether Somaliland becomes independent or whether it rejoins a union with Somalia. That's a decision for Somalia and Somaliland. All I would point out is that there could be no union unless the people of Somaliland want to join with Somalia. And that will never happen unless Somalia performs better than Somaliland. But because Somaliland is democratic, quite honestly, it needs to hold parliamentary elections. But even though Somaliland is democratic, and Somaliland has had mature capacity rather than becoming a corrupt rentier state, I don't see it happening. And the United States needs to approach that with reality.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael Rubin. Michael Rubin is Horn of Africa analyst and resident scholar, American Enterprise Institute. Thank you so much for those remarks. I'd now like to invite Dr. Jama Muse Jama, who is the director of Hargeisa Cultural Center. I want to hear from you, and I guess the first question I'm going to pose to you is, do you think that Somalilanders are interested in this dialogue to once and for all give Somaliland the rightful place that it deserves in the world?
Thank you so much, Joy. And one more time, hello everybody who is connected. I see that we are full of people who are following us, and this is a really pleasure to mention. Yes, of course, Somalilanders are happy about the dialogue with Somalia, as they are in a desire to make their point clear and to get answer to their dreamed and deserved recognition. What might look like that they are not happy is with the seriousness level of the talks and of Somalia, with a delaying and sort of lingering issues that doesn't appear fruitful answers they deserve. Somaliland, there is demand answers, and that answers are not, unfortunately, so far coming since 2012. So in the sense, to your question, Somalilanders want the dialogue to happen, to continue, to restart, and send their message clearly, and say, I hope that there is no problem or technical problem. They want the dialogue to happen and to send their message clearly about their nation and its sovereignty. It's sometimes, you know, Somalilanders sometimes look skeptical and seem really upset. And this as Somalilander who is speaking, not the scholar who are from distance looking the situation, but they are upset because of they demand transparency, they demand accountability, and they demand, most importantly, tangible results with practical directions from the dialogue. Dialogue as such to continue, it doesn't make much sense for Somalilanders. For that reason, they want really to hear clear message. One of the, I'm really sorry that Ambassador Mahboub are not with us now, but I am hesitant to disagree with him because he says that it looks like the Djibouti dialogue is in the right track. I say hesitant because I think it's too early to say that. We want to see what happened, and Somalilanders are so looking forward to, confident with the leadership of His Excellency the Minister Yassin Haji Mohamud when they are going to talk, and Somalilanders are looking at, but they are really, it's too early to say we are in the right track. The other thing that I would like to this time to disagree, not to hesitant, but completely disagree with Ambassador Mahboub is that I think the world should be bold enough and to say who is not implementing what agreed. Because if we cannot say generic, someone doesn't want to what agreed to proceed. The world should be bold enough and to say you guys are not doing and delivering what we agreed on the message. So that's one thing. The second point, I think what we can say that this dialogue starting in Djibouti is really welcomed by the Somalilanders. It's the first time that we see international community sitting in front of the two parties and hearing what they were saying. In the past, that didn't happen. Probably in 2002, it was a little bit different, but sorry, 2012. But the subsequent ones was just putting together the two groups in one room and see what happened. What happened there. This time, Somalilanders had the opportunity to showcase and tell to the world their unequivocal position about the topics. And unless we start from there, I think it's too early to say the Djibouti. The thing is, you also to say for the time, you asked it direct question about the cultural exchange, which is really an important issue because of the question about Somaliland and the use of art, culture, and heritage as a flagship is something that's not deniable. That is something that was happening for the last 20 years. And now the world knows Somaliland through the art and cultural celebration. Unfortunately, when you are following the West media, when you talk about going to Somaliland and Somalia, what comes to your mind is the problem of the piracy, problem of terrorism, refugees, all those bad things. But what, for example, the Hargeisa International Book Fair and other cultural activities and art exhibition does for Somaliland is just to say the world, hold on, there is a place living by Somali people called it Somaliland, where something good is happening, not only problems are happening. So for Somaliland, yes, the cultural and showcase of art of Somaliland was always, if you want, cultural diplomacy to tell people what's going on in Somaliland, and we are so proud.
Ahmed is asking, a significant percentage of Somaliland's youth are under the age of 30 with limited economic or job opportunities. What can the Somalilanders in the diaspora, in collaboration with the government, do to address this challenge?
Well, the people in the diaspora know better. They are already playing an important role in the economy of the people. They are helping their families. They are raising funds for different institutions and for different programs in the country. They are already playing an important role. They are contributing experience and their expertise to many programs in the country. So as far as assisting, contributing to the economy or the job opportunities of the young Somaliland youngsters, of course they are already creating businesses, they're creating employment opportunities, and they are also they are building schools. They are, so in many ways, they are contributing already, and they will, I hope, will continue to do that. And this is one way that they can contribute.
All right, thank you very much. Our next speaker is Abdi Rahman. Abdi Rahman is a consultant with deep knowledge in the energy and extractive sector as well. Abdi Rahman, I would like to bring you on. Hopefully you can hear me clearly. It's good to have you, first of all, taking the time to talk to us. Let's talk about the political stability of Somaliland and what it means across the region. Do you think that the efforts of Somaliland's democratization would play a significant role in progressing the rest of the region or the Horn of Africa region at large?
Somaliland has emerged, and rightfully so, as an inspiring nation, inspiring people to be called, and rightfully so, by commentators and independent analysts as Africa's best secret. And I like to put this into context. From the rubble of war and destruction and devastation, the country has managed to put, and the people of Somaliland, a commendable job, put together unprecedented and unparalleled statecraft. That by itself, from very little resources, from a background of not being recognized and emerging from war and conflict, to something that is unimaginable, simply mesmerizing. That is by itself a lesson that everyone can learn. To go into specific, political governance, democratic and political governance. One thing that they have succeeded in, where many countries that are around them and in the rest of the developing world, particularly in Africa, have not managed to do, that's impressive. That's what we can learn from Somaliland. They have also been able to put in, as part of the statecraft, all institutions of governance, institutions of government. If you go to Somaliland and you visit the various ministries and agencies, you'll be simply impressed. And you know, they compete, if not do better than many countries that are recognized. So these are some of my takeaways from Somaliland's independence, Somaliland's achievements and successes, which really people can learn from.
Yahya Mohammed is saying, why is the world ignoring Somaliland? Do you think the world is ignoring Somaliland? And if yes, what can be done about it?
It's a good question. It's a good question, but it also needs to be put in context. The world is not entirely ignoring Somaliland, because the world is engaging in Somaliland. That's why I was just mentioning a case where you have one of the bilateral partners posting someone for 4 years from Berlin as a regular posting. That is why they are, you know, you have delegations going to Somaliland, and that's why you have the special arrangement and the SDF, and you have Ambassador Mahbub talked about all these ambassadors going to Somaliland. So Somaliland has not been ignored, and everyone, without exception, acknowledges Somaliland.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
man. I do appreciate that, and also the insights that you shared about the role that the neighboring countries can play. Capacity building does not need recognition, really. I love that. So there's a question for Dr. Edna. Mubarak Mahmoud is asking, what are the obstacles stopping Somaliland from taking its case directly to the ICJ for an advisory opinion?
Well, that's an excellent question. I'm glad they've asked. Somaliland, as we all know, has been placed in a very rigid political exile. We have been denied access to the to communicate with international communities because of our lack of diplomatic recognition. And the unfortunate thing is the Somaliland dialogue between Somaliland and Somalia always happens when there is an outgoing president in Somalia. The current president, Farmajo, has barely 4 or 5 months. And it was the same with the previous presidents as well. But what governments should understand is that when treaties are reached and signed and agreed on, it is not an agreement with an individual. It's an agreement with a nation, with a government. And I give the example of the Constitution of the United States. The president who signed it was hundreds of years ago. But the agreement is respected and is, it's adopted, and therefore it becomes respected. Our President Bihi, is here for another, 3 or 4 years, and definitely is going to be re-elected. So it's an incumbent president who has a much longer lifespan and who can implement, agree, and respect any agreements. An outgoing president who only has 3 or 4 months, we don't know what he's going to agree on. Now, the other thing, another very quick thing is that the world thinks that dialogue with Somalia is easy. It's not, because there is no Somalia to dialogue with. When we united, or Somalia united with us in 1960, it was a united country, like the Italian Somalia. Today, Italian Somalia has been fragmented into so many little regions. Who speaks, therefore? Who speaks for Somalia, Italiana? We don't know. Farmajo doesn't even speak for a city. Mm-hmm. So again, we need to face the reality. We're not gloating over the misery of Somalia. We wish them to have a strong government. We wish them to be a strong partner, a neighbor we can deal with, dialogue with, trade with, face our challenges with. Today, we don't have a partner to deal with. It's like asking a widow to produce a document from her a partner who is no longer in a capacity to sign a document. Who signs what for Somalia? We have a strong government in Somaliland. We don't have a reciprocal government on the other side of the border. That's the biggest misery for Somaliland.
Absolutely. Thank you. A question for Michael Rubin. For how long will the major powers use Somali issues for Somali's rhetoric and do nothing in the Somaliland case? What's the role of external actors in pushing the two sides into a tangible agreement? This is a question coming in from Mustafa Ahmed. Michael Rubin, did you hear that?
As a historian, I get paid to predict the past. I only get that right about half the time. When it comes to predicting the future, that's a little bit beyond me. What I would say is that I do think that Somaliland is in a better situation than many other states seeking recognition, only because it's already won the sympathy. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of that trickling upwards. And frankly, as we enter into a period of greater international instability, of great power competition, that's something which can Somaliland can use to its advantage. And frankly, I think that the foreign minister has done a very good job of taking advantage of those opportunities as they present themselves. So I'm hopeful that in our lifetime, we're certainly going to see a change.
Somaliland, we are very confident that sooner or later Somaliland would be recognized. It might take time, but sooner or later, we have no doubt. We are fully confident and we are working on it. And we have contacts with a good number of African countries who are aware of this issue and who are, we hope, would take take a lead sometime in the near future. So we are pushing. I mean, there are, of course, there are many institutions, many countries, both South Africa and elsewhere around the world, who have different reasons for not recognizing it, but who for not taking a firm stand and clearing their position, but who are quite sympathetic, who understand, who are, who would like, who are thinking of taking a lead sometime in the near future, making their position quite clear. So, yes, of course, there are a number of countries.
Some of these countries, Your Excellency?
Sorry?
Can we name some of these countries?
I wouldn't want to, no, not at this stage.
Okay, all right. For diplomatic issues, all right. Abdisalam Saeed Salah is asking a question to Dr. Edna. I would like to ask, there are many young people who are complete products of Somaliland who feel worried about the talks. Can you officially assure them that they have nothing to worry about regarding the agreements reached with Somalia?
Of course, 150%. You have nothing to worry about. Your families, your parents, your grandparents were bombed. Your cities were bombed. You will never get bombed again. There will be no army with tanks and MiGs throwing bombs on you ever again. And you have a government in place today that is determined to keep the peace and the stability in your country. We wouldn't sell anything that belongs to Somaliland to anybody. Somaliland is not for sale. Somaliland cannot be bribed. If you lost confidence somewhere along the way, 30, 40 years ago, you have nothing to worry about. Be confident, be proud of who you are.
Sarah and Jerry from Kenya is asking, and maybe this is a question that Ambassador Waxay can respond to. There are a lot of Kenyans working in Somaliland. Are there efforts by the Somaliland representative to lobby Kenya Airways for a direct flight?
Thank you, Joy. There has been discussions between the government of Somaliland and Kenya on this note. As far as I know, there has been some visit from Kenyan government in Hargeisa and have spoken to the Somaliland Civil Aviation. However, as we all understand, since this issue of the COVID-19 has happened, things are not, the airline industry has, more or less stopped everything. But I do think that this is something that in the future will be possible if the discussion continues. The Somalilanders have a large diaspora living outside the countries, and most of them are currently traveling via Ethiopian airline or via Dubai with either Fly Dubai or Air Arabia carriers. We all know that Ethiopian, for instance, Ethiopian airline is doing daily double flights, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And most of these passengers are coming from outside. So it's definitely a lucrative route for Kenya Airways to start, and one that if they, I think, start will be one of their, most lucrative route in probably in Africa.
Okay, great. Michael Walls, I would like to bring you on board as well regarding the conversation. Someone did ask a question about having this conversation moved to the ICJ. Do you think that would be a good idea to elevate the conversation between Somalia and Somaliland to the ICJ?
The honest answer is I don't know, because it depends on the politics of doing that. Right. It's certainly something to explore. What I said earlier was, at heart, this is not a legal discussion or debate or problem. This is a political problem.
Okay, great. Thank you. I would like to get to Dr. Jama regarding the question about young people, because most of the population in Somaliland are people or youths below the age of 30. How best do you think that these young people can be helped to progress and also find their way across the different sectors in Somaliland, knowing that you head the cultural sector, or rather the cultural center in Somaliland?
Thank you, Joe. I think it is clear that young people in Somaliland are the majority of the population. That's one thing that we have to deal with. The second thing is that if we say 60 or someone is saying close to the 70% of the population are less than 30 years old, means that also they have no clue idea what used to be a Somali Republic, but this is a byproduct Somaliland, that is and product of Somaliland. So I think the first thing that we have to do, I would say our generation, when we are speaking to the young people, and I am close to them so I can understand where they are coming from, we have to change the words that we are using. When you talk, there's no any more nostalgia if there has been any of what was called a Somali Republic. They know Somaliland and they understand Somaliland, so we have to use the right words. The second and important thing is that time ago, someone called it Somaliland hostage for peace. That was happening like 10 years ago, when if you are upset and a young, relatively young person, people would say, stay calm because otherwise we have peace, so we will lose. Now, if you say that word to me and my generation, probably a little bit less than me, I understand what you are talking about. I understand what this means, the war. I understand what this means, killing your brother in front of you. So there is a sort of an open nerve that you touch when you say to me, oh, we will lose our peace. The young people of Somaliland today, they would say, I used to have, and I was born in peaceful country, I saw what you are talking about. So you cannot use the words like that you should in the past to stay calm, because of otherwise we will lose the peace. The young people of Somaliland need this really more than what we are offering and the language that we are using. So,
all right, I like that. Abdirahman, I'd like to bring you on as well. Regarding the measures that need to be taken to recognize Somaliland officially and not keep recognizing it unofficially, how best can we make sure that this happens? Can we, stop sugarcoating all of this and calling it an official recognition and get to a point where we are officially recognizing Somaliland?
There are possibly several tracks. And I think the best tracks are the political tracks. Okay, of course, there is the legalistic track, and I'm not so sure how far you can get with it. People have spoken about the ICJ and so forth. I am not so sure whether, even if the ICJ or international courts or any other African Union court rules, the implementation is a political decision. So it has a lot of sentimental value to go that route, and can be a complementary value for Somaliland. Again, I am not a Somaliland policy maker, so I won't speak for them. But the two tracks that would bear the most fruit, either one of them, is one, through the talks. Okay, if there is a negotiated settlement for a two-state solution where both Mogadishu and Hargeisa have agreed to part ways and to agree to cooperate in certain areas, that would be the best route, in my view. Okay. The alternative route is, of course, like Minister Yassin has spoken about, Somaliland's foreign minister, is of course to get countries to recognize Somaliland. The talks in terms of, as they are going along, and from the onset, really, but now there is an opportunity, should take into account all dynamics. The second thing is, whilst there is the urgency to move and finish this, but it should not be done in haste. Mm-hmm. It is not a matter that can be done quickly. There are no quick fixes. Okay, there are historical problems, there are contemporary issues, there are things that need to be dealt with. So things must be done in a very stratified manner, in a very systematic manner, and get consensus on issues, rather than because there are many benefactors and powerful benefactors who are pushing the issue, that really will not help the situation.
So in closing, I'd like to give a minute to each one of us at least to give your closing remarks, and hopefully tie that on the way forward, the pathway to recognition. What does that look like, and how can we actualize all of this conversation that we just had into action points? Because we can't keep talking. We can't be talking for 60 years. There has to be some action that needs to be taken. And maybe in closing, we can have each one of the panelists give that in their closing remarks, or at least respond to that in their closing remarks. I'll start with Michael Walls.
Okay, thank you. I mean, in 1 minute, I think the key is not to look at this as a black and white recognition, non-recognition issue. The key steps that can be taken have to be pragmatic, and they have to treat this as, you know, there are lots and lots of things that are happening, have happened before, and need to continue happening, and in some cases could happen better, about engaging on business level, in terms of financial markets, in terms of just about every possible agreement that is effectively creating a de facto situation where Somaliland's sovereignty becomes a fact of life, even if it's not formally politically recognized by other countries. Now, of course, yes, you want the political act as well, and there can be measures to try and further that as well. But in the meantime, it's not just that. It's not all or nothing. It's go with the pragmatic approach of doing everything possible to look at creating that kind of situation where Somaliland's gains to date are consolidated, confirmed, and retained and extended.
Great, thank you. Michael Rubin, I'd like to hear your action points, your going forward points as we come to a close. Just
very briefly, I would say that it's crucial, as we just heard from Abdul Rahman, that any process not have predetermined assumptions from any of the mediators, and that it's essential to not simply take US mediation at face value, but to demand US investment in the process. And again, I would say to start off by opening a diplomatic office in Hargeisa. It's important to recognize that there are other international precedents out there. Taiwan comes to mind, and Taiwan has been able to attract a great deal of support from other international organizations. And then just with the caveat, you can look at Taiwan, but Somalia isn't China. And I think it would be in the ultimate benefit of Somaliland to pursue the course it's now on.
Okay, great. Dr. Jama, you want to add something to this in a minute?
First of all, I hope I muted myself. This meeting in Djibouti was not but confidence building, as it has been said several times and repeated. And what agreed was we are ready to continue the conversation. That's what Somalilanders understood. I think that second point is, as an action point that has been already communicated, is implementing what's so far agreed. And with that, we will see if the confidence has been built on. My take of this is that this will be becoming a long-term process. It will not be by the next week, next 45 minutes, or next probably couple of years. So it will be, if not 5-6 years, it will be a long-term process. So I think what is needed and should be asked, and that we have seen within the Djibouti initiative, there is a need for guarantee. Someone who guarantees what agreed should be implemented, because of that was not happening in the past. And that's where I see the positive things that take place. Someone outside of the two parties are there, and then they will guarantee that what agreed should be implemented. Of course, the question coming from the young Somalilanders and old Somalilanders is a pathway to the recognition should be seen within the next sitting.
All right, great, thanks. Ambassador Waxay, do you want to add something to this?
Well, I think we had very lively discussions here, and I want to thank and take this opportunity to thank all the panelists. This has been really educational for me as well, even though I have been the Somaliland ambassadors. I think there's a lot of history that has been talked about, which I want to thank the panelists. I think one issue that has been talked about, especially the Somaliland-Somalia issue, is especially when you're dealing with the international community, is that the issue should be dealt with. This issue is a Somali issue, and the Somalis should solve their problems. And we have seen problems in the regions that have happened in other parts. For instance, the Ethiopian-Eritrea issue, the Sudan and South Sudan. The East Timor, and all of these countries and that have had conflicts, the international community has taken active role to mediate and to bring the two sides and to push it. And I believe that level of involvement has been lacking behind. There has been some effort in the past for the talks to happen back in London, and then also when the subsequent talks that happen in Dubai, Ankara, Djibouti, and all of that. But I think what is needed is a concerted effort from the international community to bring all the stakeholders into one, and to make these talks a meaningful way, in the sense that when Somalia and Somaliland talk, if one side doesn't fulfill the what it's been agreed, then there needs to be consequences. Otherwise, we are where we are because of that issues. So that is the point I would like to make.
Thank you. Dr. Edna Adnan.
Thank you. I think the way forward requires that governments like the United States, the European Union, and the African Union should take a serious look at this. I would like African wisdom to prevail. I would like the wisdom of the United States to prevail. I would like the great countries of the European Union to look at the facts on the ground and judge Somaliland by its actions and not condemn it for the sins of others. Because today we carry that bad name. You say Somalis and automatically something negative comes to mind. Please judge us on our successes and failures. We're human. We have the right to be recognized for what we are, to be judged for what we achieve or fail to achieve. And we invite and appreciate that renewed interest of the United States in the issues of Somaliland. After 30 years of failed policy in the Horn, I welcome the wisdom and the attention of the United States to go back to the drawing board and look at the situation again and evaluate what we've achieved, what we have failed to achieve. And of course, our partners across the border, we welcome dialogue, as I said before, but we need guarantors to make sure that what we agree on, that we become responsible for what we agree on, and that they too should be made accountable for what they agree to do. So thank you for this opportunity. And I want to thank Ambassador Basha for this initiative. And let's have more of them. Let's have more dialogue. The world today is a one global conference hall. And I want to tell the youth of Somaliland, and I will say it in Somali. Hoyo, Somaliland in Nagalumaiso, Hawarwarin, Habakin. Don't be afraid for Somaliland. Somaliland is in good hands. We're looking after it for you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Joy. Thank you, Joy. I'm glad the mediator was a female. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And finally, Professor Yasin, I'm going to give you the last words for this.
Thank you very much, Joy. First of all, I would also like to thank the panelists. And as I said at the beginning in my introductory statement, your discussions, I hope, would enlighten the rest of the world about Somaliland and what's going on in Somaliland. There are many areas, many places around the world where Somaliland is not probably yet not very well known, and our case is not yet, it's not very much known. So thank you very much, and would like you to take the word. Regarding the question, we are not sticking to only one strategy or one route to taking our case to the for recognition. We are, of course, at this stage, following a combination of strategies and routes to realize recognition. We will continue to follow the diplomatic route and trying to take our case to all the countries, to the African countries especially, to the regional countries, to the African countries, and to the powerful countries of the world, and to the institutions of the world that have been dealing with these kind of issues. So this is one, of course, one strategy we'll follow. We won't close the door of the mediated dialogue with Somalia. We'll also continue that. That might eventually bear fruit. We hope our Somalis, our neighbor Somalia, would eventually realize that there's no other way but to accept the unavoidable issue of Somaliland being independent. I have no doubt Somaliland would become independent and would regain its sovereignty from, so there's no reason why Somalia shouldn't eventually accept that reality. Well, also another strategy we would not give up is the legal approach to taking our case to the international courts and to wherever this issue. So we have different strategies, and we will pursue all possible avenues to ensure that Somaliland becomes eventually independent of these authorities. So I would like to thank everybody for having taken part. All of you to have taken part. Thank you very much. That's what I was saying.
Thank you so much, Professor Yasin. We do appreciate those remarks.